Okay, so I'll repeat again. The question is from Terry, why we never cover astrology. He says, yes, it's complex, but he's wondering why we don't cover astrology. Well, there's actually a couple of reasons. First of all, the primary reason that we don't cover it is because most of the Kabbalistic works, the later Kabbalistic works, in fact, from the time of the Zohar and onwards, but primarily from the time of the Arizal, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria and onwards, 1500s, they don't talk about astrology at all. Other than the status of the moon and the sun, the relationship with the moon and the sun, but astrology, constellations, and so on and so forth, they don't really talk about at all. Now, the Sefer Yetzirah does speak about this, but the language over there is very, very abstruse, very hard to understand what it's all about. And, so that's one of the reasons. But the primary reason that we don't speak about it is because I think there are a lot of errors in the whole concept of astrology and what it's all about. Generally, when people study astrology, so the mindset of astrology is that there are things that are in control of you, and no matter what you do, you're under their influence. You're under the influence of the constellations or whatever it is, however you want to call them. The Arizal, when he talks about the constellations, really talks about the Yud Gimel Tikkunei Dikna, the 13 tikkunim, the 13 rectifications, and garments, so to speak, of the beard. In other words, it's a beard of Keter, of Arich, whatever. Let's not get into the whole discussion. But that view is a view which is very much in the province of what's called Avodah Zarah. Let me just turn it off. Okay. Avodah Zarah, which is idolatry. A person always has free choice, and it's one of the 13 principles of the Jewish faith is that you have free choice, and therefore we don't speak about it because it tends to lead to a mindset that you are controlled and you are not in control. Now, it happens to be true that a lot of people are controlled and they're not in control. It's true. However, we try not to, we try very hard not to allow that mindset to sort of take hold of us. And I'll explain why. I'll explain why soon, maybe in answer to another upcoming question, why we don't want that mindset in China to take control of us. A person always has free choice. And that's the difference between man and the angels. The angels do not have free choice, actually, even though they are very lofty creatures, very lofty beings, but they lack free choice. They run according to the algorithm for each angel, so to speak, to use modern terminology, whereas we don't. We have the choice at any point in time. Sometimes the choices are very difficult to make. It's true. It says that the 10 plagues, during the 10 plagues, which led to the holiday of Passover, Pesach, during the 10 plagues, the first 5 plagues, Pharaoh had free choice. But once he already chose a certain way, it was very hard for him to change. So after that, his free choice was really, in a sense, taken away. Theoretically, he had it, but it was so far out of his reach already because of the choices that he'd made previously that, in a sense, he didn't have free choice anymore. Okay. That was one question. There are several others. Okay. Okay, there's a private question here that I'll come to soon. I just want to address other questions that came in by email. So I hope that answers your question, Terry. Okay, here's another question. In Psalms 49, 2-3, it speaks about the sons of Adam and the sons of man. B'nai Adam, B'nai Ish. Who are the sons of Adam versus the sons of man? There are various explanations, various commentaries that explain this. One of the commentaries, the classic commentary is someone named Rashi, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, the famous commentator on scripture and on Talmud. He was actually a French citizen. He lived in France in like the 1200s. Okay, so Rashi says like this: the sons of Adam, the Bnei Adam, the sons of Adam, are really, that's talking about Abraham, and the sons of Ish, the sons of man, are talking about that the descendants of Noah, the descendants of Abraham and the descendants of Noah. And that's at least one position. There is another commentator named the Radak, Rabbi David Kimchi, and he explains it differently. He says Bnei Adam are people who are on a lower level of being, I suppose you could say, and Ish are on a higher level of being. Now that's the opposite of what it says in Kabbalah. Generally, Kabbalah, the Kabbalistic terminology of Adam and Ish, which is both translated as man, but Adam generally is a name which is seen to be advantageous. It has superior qualities. A person who is called Adam is one who is superior, usually in intellect. He's intellectually superior, and his intellect controls his emotions. A person who's called an Ish is one who is, how shall I say it? He's a person who is characterized by good character traits, good qualities of character, good emotional qualities. So Adam is good intellectual qualities, and Ish is good. Okay. Right. Just be aware that the reason I mute everybody, the reason I mute everybody is not because I don't like anybody, but just that's easier to run. There's no background disturbances, because it sometimes happens. Okay, so that is the answer to that question. The Kabbalistic meaning of man is someone who's Adameh Elyon. I'm like the one above. In other words, that superior quality of an intellectual grasp, a consciousness of godliness. Whereas Ish is only an emotional consciousness of godliness. Okay, there's another question here. Explain the concept of partzuf of a sefirah. Okay. The partzuf of a sefirah, every sefirah, what is a sefirah? A sefirah is a divine emanation. Let me see, I should actually get up. Let me just go out of full screen for a second. And I will just get a chart so I can show you. Yeah, here we go. Okay. We can get that back now. Share the screen. Here we are. Share the screen. Okay. Yeah, I assume you can all see the screen here. Let me see, just 1 second. Where did the chat disappear to? My chat seems to have disappeared. All right, whatever. I'll get to it later. I guess I'll find it. Oh, here it is. Okay, chat. Yeah, good. All right. So, we will look at the sefirot over here. Just let's discount Keter for a minute. We're not going to talk about Keter, but Chochmah, for example. Yeah, the sefirah of Chochmah, right? The sefirah of Chochmah. So the sefirah of Chokhmah is called a sefirah when you're talking about one particular quality. Now, in the sefirot, the way they were in their original permutation of the sefirot was that the sefirot was sort of, so to speak, one above the other, not in columns. They were one above the other, not in columns. What's the difference between one above the other and columns? The difference is as follows. That any sefirah that's in a column, that's in three columns rather, any of the sefirot that are in three columns actually partakes of, as you can see, the connections between them, partakes of the other sefirot as well. That has connections to all the other sefirot. So in other words, in Chokhmah itself, in the world of Tikkun, this was not so in the world of Tohu. In the world of Tohu, all the sefirot are one above the other. In the world of Tikkun, the world of rectification, they come in three columns. But the three columns are indicative not just that they're built slightly differently, but it's indicative of an interrelationship between the sefirot. Right? So, Chokhmah, therefore, is the quality of what Chokhmah is. Chokhmah is the beginning. Chokhmah is called Yirat Hashem, the awe, the sense of awe of godliness. Chokhmah is the concept of bittul koach ma, the concept of self-nullification, bittul. But Chokhmah of the world of Tikkun also contains within it all of the other sefirot. So you'll have Bina of Chokhmah, and Chesed of Chokhmah, and Gvura of Chokhmah, and Tiferet of Chokhmah, and Netzach, and Hod, and Yisod, and Malchut, and all the sefirot as they are in Chokhmah. Right? All the sefirot will be contained in Chokhmah. And the same thing is true of Bina. Right? Bina, and therefore Chokhmah is called, in the partzufim, Chokhmah is called not just Chokhmah, but Chokhmah is also called Abba, the father. Because the father is the progenitor of the entire family, and therefore the entire family is contained, so to speak, in him. And so too with Bina, right? This Bina is called the mother sefirah, the supernal mother sefirah, and she contains within her Chokhmah, Bina, and Bina, Chesed, Bina, Gvura, etc., 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 right? Because she's the Aim Habanim, she's the mother of the children, and therefore she contains all the children. But she also has an aspect of Chokhmah in her, just as Chokhmah has an aspect of Bina in him. So she's called the mother. Now, these sefirot over here, from Chesed to Yesod, they form one single partzuf, the partzuf of Zeir Anpin. Right? Why all of them together? Because all of them operate, that's how they operate. They operate as a cohesive structure of six different concepts, like the sides of a cube. The sides of a cube, there's six sides. Similarly, there's six sides. There's six sides to this structure. So they all interact together, and even though we have Chokhmah of Chesed and Bina of Chesed and Gvura of Chesed, but nevertheless, the entire thing is regarded as, all these six sefirot are regarded as one partzuf, the partzuf of Zeir Anpin. Malchut is regarded as the partzuf, what's called Bat, the daughter, or the Shechina. And just as there's Malchut of Chokhmah, so too there's Chokhmah Malchut. Malchut is called a partzuf on its own as well. It's also called Nukva, the female. Zeir Anpin, Chesed to Yesod is called the male partzuf, and this is the female partzuf. Male, young male and female, father and mother. Okay? Okay. Let's see. I hope that explains that question. Now we have another question, which was, one second. Having trouble here with my phone. Okay. Intellect versus emotions. Please, intellect versus emotions and how they impact each other. As discussed in Apples from the Orchard, Parshas Tzav, I don't remember what it says there, even though I did look through it. The author, or at least the translator and commentator of Apples from the Orchard, is actually a very, very good friend of mine. I would say my best friend. He lives in Israel. I used to live there as well. His name is Moshe Vishnevsky, a very good friend of mine. And I actually edited the Apples from the Orchard for him. It's an excellent book. I could recommend it highly, although it's probably not a cheap work from what I understand. In any event, what's the connection between the intellect and the emotions, how they impact each other? Well, that's a huge discussion. That's a very long discussion, but basically the system in Chabad is Lubavitch or whatever. I'm a Lubavitcher Chassid, or Chabadnik if you want. Our system maintains that mind has to rule over emotions. The mind has to rule over the emotions. In other words, intellect over emotions is the way things are supposed to be. That's why we're actually built that way. We're built with the higher sefirot, and the higher powers of the soul are more elevated. They're in the more elevated parts of the body, and then the rest of the body is sort of lower sections, and it's supposed to be that way because the mind is supposed to rule over the heart. It is said of the author of the Tanya, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, that it's an apocryphal story. Whether there's complete evidence for it or not, I'm not 100% sure. In other words, whether it's written in the Napoleon very much wanted to meet the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya. He wanted to meet him. And Napoleon was a very, very, very powerful person, not only militarily, and he had a very good military sense, excellent in fact, but he was also very powerful spiritually in a very negative way. And the Alter Rebbe was tried as much as possible to keep out of his way. But in any event, they say that at some point in time, Napoleon somehow met with the Alter Rebbe, and the story is that he sort of kind of imprisoned him very briefly for a little while. He accused him of being a spy against the French army. Again, how much of this is there is in evidence, I don't know, but that is the way it says it, and the story goes that Napoleon, when he accused the Alter Rebbe of being a spy, he immediately put his hand when he said, he was like sort of just like talking to him, and then he said, and we have a visitor. Hello there. Let me see here. Pin video on. Hi there. All right. Unpin. I'm going to unpin you. Unpin. All right. Okay. So what was I about to say? The Alter Rebbe was, there we go, was sitting with Napoleon, and Napoleon accused him of being a spy. And as he accused him of being a spy, Napoleon put his hand on the Alter Rebbe's heart to see if his heart would jump out of fear, because he was basically captured by the French at that point in time. And he saw that the Alter Rebbe's heart did not skip a beat. He felt it didn't skip a beat. He was completely just unfazed by the whole thing. And he said, okay, so you're probably not a spy then. The fact that he wasn't a spy, but can you imagine that, someone accuses you of being a spy? I would imagine your heart rate would go like, from what the normal heart rate is to at least double immediately, especially if it was Napoleon who was accusing you of that. But in any event, mind rules over the heart, as the Alter Rebbe spoke about afterwards. He said that I learned when I was with my teacher, the Maggid Mizrich, who was the successor to the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid Mizrich, taught him to control his emotions so that they would not be under their own, they would be under the control of his mind at all times. So that's the idea of the intellect and emotions. I don't know if that's what it says in what we're discussing in Apples from the Orchard over there. I didn't look it up. But in any event, they do impact each other. Now, the emotions have to impact the intellect as well. The emotions are they're hot, they're warm. The emotions are cold, boiling, right? The emotions are rotchim, they boil. Whereas the intellect is cold and still. The emotions are compared to fire. And in fact, even in ancient Greek medicine and so on and so forth, or psychology, the heart is the seat of the emotions, and it's the seat of the heat of the body, traditionally. Whereas the mind is cold, it's like compared to water. The heart is compared to fire, the mind is compared to water. The problem with water is that it can be too cool and too, so the emotions have to heat up the heart, have to heat up the mind as well. In other words, that enthusiasm and what's called in Yiddish lebendigkeit, enthusiasm and get up and go and you're into it. That comes from the emotions. It doesn't come from the intellect. The intellect is very cold and dry. The heart is warm and hot. So the two have to affect each other. I hope that answers that question. Let's see, there was another question, I think. Well, that's from those questions. Okay, there's another question. There's another question here. All right. First of all, I would like to talk a little bit about interrelationships between members of the group. There was a certain psychiatrist, actually, very, very, very interesting person, and I think he changed really to a very large extent. He and Viktor Frankl really changed the face of psychology and psychiatry in the modern world, because they both speak about a solution-oriented approach to things. In other words, everybody knows what the problems are. We all know what the problems are. What we need to do is work on solutions. Solutions that are worked on individually are usually not as good as solutions that are worked on in a group setting, unless the person who happens to be very wise or whatever. But generally, in a general sense, you could say that when things are worked on together, then and in a cooperative fashion, then usually the results and the solutions are much more tenable and much longer lasting. However, when there's a lot of criticism and negative feelings being expressed, or just this is a problem, that's a problem, the other thing's a problem, then it usually doesn't end up in a good place, and it doesn't add to the cooperative environment, which is the environment which is necessary for real spiritual growth. Okay, enough said of that. Someone asked a question about the angels. Many Kabbalists speak of the animals as angels, forces down here. It's not that the animals are angels. It's just that some of the angels are called animals because of a certain quality that they have. They're called chayot. The chayot are called wild animals, actually. And in fact, in the Merkava is the vehicle, so to speak, for godliness, for the revelation of godliness in the world of Yetzirah. So two sides of the Merkava, actually three sides of the Merkava are animals. I suppose you could call them three animals. One is the face of a lion on the right, the face of an ox on the left, and the face of an eagle in the front. I don't know if an eagle is called an animal. It's not exactly an animal, it's a bird, but in a general sense, I suppose you could say. So three of the faces of the Merkava are animals. What does it mean that they're animals? They are chayot. They are a certain class of angels that is represented by the same forces that animate a lion, an ox, and an eagle. Lion, very powerful, fearless, and so on and so forth. An ox, also very powerful, but his power can be harnessed for plowing the fields, for example. Now, I know we don't do that today, but ox can also be harnessed to a good steak. So we do use oxen and things like that for human uses today as well. Obviously, lions not. Eagle is another completely different quality. It's a quality of sort of overseeing everything from above, right? It's the view from above, the view from sort of a somewhat higher plane of being, and it sees things not from as they are down here, but as they are from up above. So this is like three angelic forces. The same thing that animates an eagle, a lion, etc., an ox, is the same force that animates certain classes of angels. So that's maybe why Cabala speak of they don't really speak of the animals as angels, but of the angels as animals. So, and man is also the last face on the Merkava is the face of man, and that is akin to human intellect, not divine intellect, but human intellect. In other words, the ability to rationalize, to use the intellect for intellectual and academic endeavors, so to speak, a rationalistic approach to things. Is man the animal that's related to the Satan? No, not really. Okay. The difference between sefirot and partzufim, I think I just answered that actually. Maybe you weren't on. The difference between sefirot and partzufim is a sefirah is a single power and a partzuf is a composite. If you actually want to know, right, you know what, let me just give you a link and then you will be able to see. You go to Cabala Online.org, CabalaOnline.org, and there you can either look for my name, because I wrote an article on partzufim, or just look for partzufim. Right, there's a search box in the top right corner, and you just look for oh, wait a second, I spelled it wrong. Not the Z. Okay, partzufim, there you go. Here we go. Okay. Here's one. And here is two. Let me give you these two here. All right. Here we go. I'm going to type it into the message box. That's directly about partzufim. And this is also about partzufim, but somewhat more general. There you go. Okay. If you want to just, why did I send that privately? That was a mistake. All right, I'll send it again publicly. 1 second. To everyone in the meeting. Okay, here we go again.
Call from name unavailable.
Calls every 5 minutes. Okay, there you go. Those two sources should tell you everything you need to know about partzufim. If you still have questions afterwards, you can ask, and I will help you out. But there's a lot of these questions are answered on that website, Cabala Online. A lot of stuff. I wrote a lot of stuff many years ago already, but I wrote a lot of stuff for them. It's something that you'll find useful probably. Okay, let's see a couple of other questions here. let's see. What good came out of the Holocaust? Someone is asking privately, so I'm not going to say the name. What good came out of the Holocaust? It's a good question. It's a question that we have to struggle with. There's no easy answer to it. There's no easy answer to it. Unfortunately, I think the good that could have come out of the Holocaust was wasted. A lot of it. It went into politics instead. That's what I think. And I'm not talking about American politics. I'm talking about Israeli politics. Enough said. I'm going to get some people being pretty upset with me if I continue. So, we don't know what good, very often you don't know what good, like what good came out of the destruction of the first temple, the second temple. There was a Holocaust then as well. In the first, the destruction of the first temple, the destruction of the second temple, there were Holocaust then too. What good came out of them? When we get to the third temple, we'll know. It's very hard to say what it was. In other words, I don't want to try and read God's mind. He didn't say directly through any of the prophets what the good that came out of it was. So I hesitate to say something that may well be incorrect. And my system of doing things in general, which you probably know about already, I mean, it's nothing new, but my system of doing things, I try not to make predictions about the future. I don't mind explaining the present, but I don't like to make predictions about the future. Some people are wont to make. Some people do that often. This means this, and that sign means that, and the coronavirus is a sign of this particular thing, and this is going to happen as a result, and it's a punishment for this thing or for that thing. That's not my purview. It doesn't say in my passport Elijah the prophet, who's the harbinger of the future redemption. It doesn't say even on my driver's license such a thing. So I am abstaining from that particular role, and I would suggest that other people do the same thing. I'm not talking about any of you here. I'm talking about other people who regard themselves as Kabbalists. There may be a small group of people that regard themselves as Kabbalists, but it's very questionable whether they are, because they're not trying to receive, which is the meaning of the word Kabbalah, but they're trying to stuff their views down somebody else's throat, and I think that is incorrect. Let's not make predictions of things that we have no knowledge of. You cannot make predictions unless you know, and I'm absolutely sure that to none of the people who are making all kinds of predictions and all kinds of statements about the future, that they don't have, I'm sure that they do not have any inside knowledge. We follow what it says in the Shulchan Aruch. In the Shulchan Aruch, it says at the time of the coronavirus, for example, at the time of any plague, and the coronavirus is a plague, it says very clearly what you're supposed to do. The Shulchan Aruch, Yerodea, chapter 116, 116, if paragraph 5 in the Ramah, it says you keep a low profile during the time of a plague. Stay at home. That's basically what it says. Stay at home. Don't go out in public. Stay at home as much as possible. Chavi b'ma'at rega. Hide for a little bit. Ad yavor zam, until the danger is over. Okay, that's my that is my how shall I say it, castigation for the night. Okay. What good came? Okay, so we're trying to answer that. I can't say what good came out of it. Anti-Semitism is up again. Yeah, maybe it is. But unfortunately for some Jews, and I say this with a little bit of regret, I must admit. For some Jewish people, like the anti-Semitism has become their, worries about anti-Semitism has become their religion to a certain extent. Now, I'm not criticizing you for that. The person who asked the question, I'm not criticizing you for that. But there's plenty of good that's going on in the world as well. And there's plenty of non-anti-Semitism. And, there's always going to be anti-Semites. There's always going to be people who are concerned about other people. There's always going to be people who are concerned about foreigners or people who are concerned about dual loyalties and this kind of thing. You just do what you have to do and forget about what everybody else thinks. Yes, true. There was a Holocaust, and you have to keep your eyes open, and you can't be foolish about these things. And as the Lubavitcher Rebbe said once, the Lubavitcher Rebbe we're not talking about some just regular guy, Lubavitcher Rebbe once was asked the question, could there ever be a Holocaust in America? And he said, tomorrow morning there could be. Don't ever assume that it's never going to happen here. That is a foolish attitude. On the other hand, he never concentrated on that particular idea. We have to rebuild. We have to concentrate on the building and not on the history. The Holocaust is over. What we now have to do is the opposite. We have to rebuild. We have to rebuild what was destroyed. There were 6 million people destroyed. Let's make sure that each one of us is replaced by at least 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, however many possible, children who will grow into adults that will also have children and so on and so forth. Let's rebuild. That's my attitude. And that's what I hope other people are concerned about. We shouldn't be concerned about hatred from somebody else. That's their problem. Be concerned about rebuilding, about moving forward, about showing kindness to your fellow man, whoever they may happen to be, as far as it is possible. We should try and show kindness, and we don't necessarily look at the religions of people. We don't look at their color of skin and so on and so forth, or the status of people. People. Every human being is made in the image of God. Every human being has a little piece of God in him and her. So we have to act that way. All right. The high rates of the virus amongst the Haredi, amongst the ultra-Orthodox community, because they were stupid. I hate to say it, but they were stupid. Just government regulations, we'll ignore them. Foolish. They should have been much more careful, and they weren't. And look, there are reasons I understand. Praying in a quorum, in a minyan, a quorum, praying every day with other people together is the way it was always done. And nothing stopped them before, and why should this stop them now? But unfortunately, the results were not good. It wasn't that anybody was trying to stop praying in a quorum. It's just that it was a dangerous thing to be doing at this point in time. As I said before, the Shulchan Aruch is very clear. The Code of Jewish Law is very clear what you do at a time of a plague. And that is, you keep a low profile. If you have to, you pray in your house. It doesn't stop you from praying at all, but you have to pray in your house. And you have to go out as little as possible and look after your health. Unfortunately, the people who didn't do that, some of them are unfortunately suffering the consequences of that foolishness. Are partzufim linear sefirot? No, they're not linear sefirot. They are clusters of sefirot or interoperability of the sefirot. The difference between partzufim and sefirot is the sefirot is a one-way, like a one-way street from above to below, and sometimes from below to above, but there's no interaction. It's a one-way. It's a one-way street, either going up or going down. Usually going down, from the highest sefirot to the lowest sefirot, whereas the partzufim are interactive. It's I suppose it would be the difference between, you could say, sending a private text and posting on Facebook. I don't know if that's a good analogy, but let's think about it. Okay, let's try that one. So just sending a private message one to the other would be like the operation of the sefirah, and posting it on a on a forum would be like more like a partzuf, the operation of a partzuf. Okay, so those are those articles. Maybe the answer is in the cause. I'm not sure what that was about. The answer is in the cause. I'm not sure what that's about. Okay. Is there a hierarchy of Melchizedek, Kohanim, Levim? What were the roles during the third temple? I don't know if Melchizedek comes into this, but Melchizedek was one of the Kohanim. He was a Kohen Gadol at one time, but there's always the Kohanim and the Kohanim and the Levim are of the tribe. There are 12 tribes. The 12 Jewish tribes originally, and the tribe of the Levite tribe, the tribe of Levi, were the only ones that did not participate in the golden calf. So therefore, they were given, from that time on, they were given a special dispensation, and that was to be like priests to the nation. But within the priests to the nation, there's two sections. There's the actual priests, the Kohanim, the descendants of Aaron, and then there's a whole tribe of the Levites who the Kohanim are originally Levites as well, but there's a sort of their special section they selected out, and the rest of them, the rest of the Levites also serve in the temple, but in a different capacity. The Kohanim, the priests, are involved in the sacrifices and so on and so forth, were at least, and will be in the future. But the Levites are have other functions. Amongst them, one of their things is singing and playing instruments and so on and so forth in the temple as part of the temple service. So that's the roles in the third temple will be exactly the same. First I came for A and I said nothing, then I came for B and I said nothing, and eventually they come for me and I said nothing. No, I'm not saying you should ignore, you should ignore anti-Semitism, but let's not make it into another coronavirus. It's not, it's there are always people who are going to hate, and there's always people who are not going to hate, and we have to focus on the building rather than on the fears of this anti-Semite or that anti-Semite. There's plenty of anti-Semites to go around, let's face it. If it wasn't a public forum, I would tell you what I really think of some of them, but a lot of them are just completely mistaken, or perhaps they were treated rudely by one of our fellow Jewish people, and that may be something to think about, that we should really perhaps be more careful in how we speak to people generally in the world. Would be a good thing. Lubavitcher Rebbe, for example, who's my role model, and I try to make him my role model in everything. He would. There was always like policemen around, make sure that there was no attacks against him or whatever, things like that. He would always, when he went out, he would always salute them and thank them and make sure that they had what they needed, and he was always very grateful for their help. And I think that that's the way we have to treat all people. That's the way we have to treat all people. Okay. Anything can happen anyway, yeah. Were they davening with a minyan during temple times when you spoke about the Holocaust? Were they davening with a minyan during temple times? Probably they were, yeah. I mean, they had like secret minyanim, but this is a little bit different because it's a dever. It's a plague. In the time of a plague, the sages say explicitly, and it's brought down in the code of Jewish law. In the time of a plague, you stick with your family. That's it. There's actually, I was reading something the other day. Somebody sent me a very interesting thing. There was a certain rabbi called the Beis Yisrael. I think it was Beis Yisrael. He was the Rebbe of Ger, one of the Gerer Rebbes. And during his time there was a plague in the city that he lived in. And so some of his followers, his disciples, said to him, like, what should they do? Should they leave the city? Because that's the advice that the Shulchan Aruch gives, or the law that it states, is if there's a plague in a city, then leave the city. Leave that city. But here the plague is widespread. It's all over the country, so it's not going to help to leave the city. So you stay in your city and you stay in your house. So anyway, the Beis Israel told them that if you come and you see me, you will survive. Anyone who sees my face will survive. He was able to say such a thing, and that's in fact what happened. And there's a portrait of him, and that portrait was painted by a non-Jewish painter, a non-Jewish artist, who actually went to see him, and he survived the plague. Anyone who saw the Beis Israel survived the plague, but he was able to make such a promise. And I don't know anyone today who is able to make similar promise, at least not in this country. Maybe there are. Let me not say that there aren't, but I haven't heard of anyone saying such a thing. But he was able to say such a thing. Okay. Let's see the next one. 2 different questions. You want to know about my statement, the answering the cause. This was in relation to the Holocaust, was maybe a response. I'm still not sure what you mean. Sorry. Yeah, our response to the Holocaust has to be to rebuild. You know, we rebuild, and we rebuild better and bigger and stronger and with greater kindness and with greater thoughtfulness and with greater awareness than before. That's about it. Yeah, probably in 2 weeks. Yeah, because it's Passover. This next Thursday night will be Passover, and the following Thursday night will still be Passover, and so the week after that. So in 3 weeks, actually, not 2 weeks. All right. Okay, folks, that's it. See you next time around. I hope that answers all the questions. Any other questions? Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, be safe, everybody. Be safe. It's always good to get a lot of sleep at a time like this. Don't don't get worn out, and don't get run down. Vitamins as much as you can right now until they say zinc is very good for you. But generally vitamin D3, vitamin C, zinc. Eat well and be well. Alrighty. Have a good one, everybody. Have a great Passover, Pesach. Water with lemon. Yeah, people say water with lemon is very good. My wife does that. She's really into it. And I like mint tea, but alrighty. Okay, folks. See you around next time. All the best.